Everybody, welcome to Soap Making with Erin. It's really fun to have you here. I imagine you're probably all pretty familiar with Zoom. My name is Mike Scott. I'm the program director at Farm Table, and you're welcome to turn your video on if you want us to see your faces. So Erin has taught for us before, and she raises San Clemente Island goats on her farm and other animals as well. And also, we sell some of her soap at Farm Table in our retail section, and she's going to teach us how to do that tonight. You know, our mission is to build local food culture, and part of that is making products from local foods. In this case, the milk that Erin has from her goats. And of course, we have a restaurant and programs and an art gallery as well, where we try to express our mission of building that local food culture. So welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. Erin, please feel free to say more about yourself and hop in.
Will do. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining tonight. Quite honestly, soap making is pretty easy. It's when I do this whole process for everybody, actual making of the soap probably won't take more than 5 minutes. And so I'm gonna really verbally go through the whole process with everybody, step by step, for you to grasp the gist of it, because it's gonna be soap in front of your eyes in a jiffy. And the whole reason I even started making soap in the first place was because of the goat breed that I have. They're called San Clemente Island goats, like Mike said, and they're also critically endangered. And there's about 800 to 1,000 of them left in the US and Canada right now. And so when I started raising this breed, I kind of put the cart in front of the horse. Like, I got these goats, but I was just like, well, why did I get them in the first place? What am I going to do with them? So I finally chose the path of making goat milk soap with their milk as a way to promote them. The label, I actually have a soap bar right here. This is the label for them, and I'll actually adjust some lighting here in a second. But the back of the label has a little story about each goat that I have, or some of the goats, and it talks about the breed itself. And I think that's a good way to get a little information into everybody's hands. This to talk about the goats themselves. I'm gonna zoom up and actually turn on a light right here. I'll be right back. Maybe just a tad bit better. And so the whole soap making process is a matter of taking lye and mixing it with oils to create a bar of soap. And every bar of soap, or things that are called soap, has lye in it. It turns into a different compound altogether after the lye is mixed with the soap. It's no longer lye in the bar of soap, but lye is an ingredient. I think it's this. I really wanted to clarify that because I think there's something out there where there's kind of like misinformation floating around that you can have soap without lye in the process of making it, and that's not true. But it can be this turned into, you know, I forgot what the new name for lye in the soap is, but people will use that name. Or a detergent doesn't have lye in it, but like a soap has to have lye in it for it to be a soap. So this a little clarification there. And I'm going to go into the actual soap making process itself. And what I'm going to be doing here, I'll probably tilt the camera around a little bit so you can see, but to my left here is where I'll be heating up my oils. I have coconut oil, shea butter, and olive oil, and those 3 oils, and they're all in particular quantities or weights actually. And so what I'll be doing is heating up oils right here, and in that same process over here is a bowl that I'm going to be having my goat milk in, and then I'll be mixing the lye in with it as well. And I'll be having this in my sink, and the sink is going to be filled with cool water to help cool down that chemical process that happens when you mix lye and a liquid together, it heats up really fast. And this goes into lye safety and precautions when you're making soap, is that you should have goggles. So I'll be goggling up. You have a mask that I wear because of the fumes that do happen. I won't do it because it's noisy. I would turn on the oven's vent system too to help ventilation. When you make soap, make sure you're in a well ventilated area. And I will be also wearing glovey gloves. And then I would have long sleeves on when I'm making soap. I'm not all prettied up. Right now I have overalls on, but I like to be safe. I tend to wear shoes when I'm making this too, because you want to be careful about splatters with lye. If you do get splattered with lye, this washing it off with cold water right away, it's helpful, but it's a chemical burn. So be careful with that, but this washing it off right away will, get it washed off and it shouldn't be an issue. I've had a couple chemical burns splattered on me before. It wasn't a big deal. That's why we got goggles, because that would be horrible if you got it in your eyes. And so what you're gonna see tonight is the whole actually measuring process and how I get the oils out of my bulk containers as well. I didn't do this for my last presentation, and I think it's kind of fun to see like the quantities of oil that I order and how I deal with it. I think that's something that's unique, because I'm scooping coconut oil out of like a huge drum. So I'm gonna go get that oil, and I'm gonna bring a scale over, and I'll just be off camera for a couple seconds and I'll be right back. So this is a big drum of coconut oil. And you can see it's getting down there a little bit. And so I'll be scooping coconut oil out of here. I get jugs of olive oil, and I get about 12 at a time, if not more. I wish I had a different containment system, but I order from a local business, so I'm able to skip on a lot of shipping costs for ordering oil online. I don't know, you would pay 70 to 100 bucks in shipping costs sometimes for bulk oil. So this helps me cut costs a little bit, and I can support another local business.
Erin, where do you get coconut oil that size?
Yeah, my secret, I'll divulge my secret. If people are familiar with it, I order through the Grain Bin in Boyceville. They're kind of a bulk food store, but also a bakery. And I'm assuming that you could talk to other bulk food stores, even a co-op, and like start pricing out oils and have them ordering it for you. They still like charge me like a handling costs from the Grain Bin, but it's nothing compared to like getting it shipped over to me. So that's been a really valuable find. And then working with Dawn that owns the Grain Bin, she was really great about finding me different oils and doing some cost comparisons as well as quality comparisons. So it's been fun. So if you could go full organic if you wanted to, if you had that, that was your choice to do an organic bar of soap, that could be easily done. I know people order through Costco or shop through Costco and Walmart. There's a lot of online places that you can order bulk supplies through. It's again that shipping cost. So, but yeah, the Grain Bin, awesome. So this comes in 10 pounds, I think. This is something I do have to order online. I can't find it anywhere else. And so I scoop oil out of here. And yeah, it's this kind of a consistency of coconut oil as well. So I'm gonna put on my gloves, and I have a scooping spoon for my oils. And that's another thing you might want to do if you're gonna make soap on a regular basis, is keeping utensils specific for your soap making. You don't want to, use your spatula for making muffins and then put your food spatula into your soap. I mean, maybe it's not a big deal, but if you're going to be selling it, it probably is kind of a big deal. And actually one more thing is, or a couple more things before I start scooping oil. It's a little off camera, but this is my wooden mold. I just had my partner make these for me. You can get a silicone mold to put in here, or I just line it with parchment paper, and I'll be actually dumping my soap into this as a big, huge loaf, and this is where it will cure in. This is my mixer. I should probably get a new one pretty soon. I've had this for a couple years. Using an electric mixer like this will make your soap making process like 1,000 times more fast. The first time I made soap, I have a big whisk. It took me 2 hours of whisking for it to be soap. And it made me really frustrated that it would take so long to make soap. Getting one of these, this is where it takes us a couple minutes to properly mix your oils and your live goat milk mixture together. Yes, this is awesome. This is one of my scales. I keep quite a few scales on hand because I tend to break them. I use them, they're oily and slippery and they tend to fall all over the place. I'm a kind of a klutz. So this is a nice scale. One thing that's nice is that it stays on for a long time. If I'm going back and forth measuring oils on, like I would have some scales time out and it would make me mad because I would have a tiered weight on here with materials already in it and I'd have to start over again. So this Escali scale is actually really good quality and it's maybe 25 bucks. So the whole process, I'll be again scooping oil into this pan pretty soon, and this is what I'll have on my stove. And I'll kind of back up. I'll be heating up all these oils over here, and in the meantime, in the sink, I'll be having my frozen goat milk and putting my lye into it as well. I'll kind of just keep the camera over here as both of these things are happening. So you can, I think the lye part is more important for you to see rather than melting oil. You want to what happens, what I've figured out with my soap making, you want to have your lye and goat milk at 86 degrees and your oils melting and warmed up at about 86 degrees. So when you mix them together, they're at the same temps. I have found that the way that I do things, they turn out at 86 degrees at the same time, and I stopped using a thermometer because I can just know and see that it's working well. What I'll be making tonight is lavender goat milk soap. So what I'll be adding into my oil and goat milk lye mix this is called bentonite clay. And it's just something I add a little bit of into my soap. And it's supposed to help retain scents in the soap. And it kind of turns the soap initially a gray color, but it doesn't keep that gray color. The soap turns out nice. And I'm getting low, but I will be adding dried lavender oil as well as lavender essential oil, which I'll be getting off camera in a minute. So this is the process again, is like melting the oil, mixing the frozen goat milk with the lye. They're both at about 86 degrees. I'll bring the oils over here. I'll show you what they look like as well. And I'll be dumping that lye and goat milk into the oils. And then I'll be moving that over into the sink with cool water in it. And I'll be using this to mix it. And I'll kind of scoot everything over for you all to see how that mix initially looks, because it separates. There's that oil and then there's a lye liquid mix, and you can just see that the oil is kind of at the top. And I'll show you as I mix it how it basically turns into what looks like a cookie, or not a cookie, but a cake batter. And this is a point where it's called trace. And it's a little bit tricky to see sometimes, but that's an important word to know out of maybe all of the stuff, is the trace aspect, because that's when you know when your soap is ready to pour into the mold. a few times. I probably haven't hit that trace aspect. And what happens when you pour that soap into the mold is that it separates in the mold. I had soap, like really heavy soap at the bottom of my mold. And then there was a layer of oil on top, and it just started leaking all over into my kitchen, and it was gross and oily and sad. So that's just something that's really important to recognize, is like that trace aspect when it all of that stuff solidifies into a batter like consistency. But then you don't want to go too far, because if you keep mixing it, it starts to call what it's called seizing up, and that is when that soap mixture will start to like really harden up and clump up, and then it becomes hard to like scoop out, put into a mold. It makes your soap this like funky and sad as well. I've had some seize up on me due to essential oils that didn't mix with my soap really well. Specifically, it was a pine essential oil. This made my whole soap batch seize up into clumps, and I kind of dumped it out really fast, and this turned into this weird, gross thing that I ended up composting. So those are some of the things that I've seen that are issues with making soap. If something doesn't turn out well, there's something that I haven't seen, but when you have your soap in a mold, there's something called like a volcano effect, where like it looks like a science experiment, and I've seen pictures of people with their volcano soap, and something happens and it just like starts erupting all over the place. And I think that has to do with overheating things too much, and then you're mixing your lye and your oils together at too high of a temp, and there's that chemical process where this something really funky happens. So this warning, again, that trace aspect is really important, so I'll try and get a close-up of that. So
Erin, can I interrupt for a second? The process you're talking about is in that handout as well that we sent out, correct?
Yes. And there's so much there's so much information out there, and in that handout as well, like that you can look into and see all of these other technicalities. I make a really, really simple kind of soap. You can go as crazy as you want to, or as simple as you want to. So yeah, all of that information's in the handout, but I'm gonna start scooping up oil. And I don't know if it's an appropriate time while I'm scooping up this oil. I can also take questions if people have any as well.
Great. So yeah, while she's at it, folks, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, as long as she can hear us, please feel free to do that, since we're a relatively small group.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Erin. It's Amy Covington. Can you talk a little bit about soaps that aren't made with goat milk? I mean, I love goat milk soap, but if you don't have ready access to that, is there a good substitute for goat milk? Is it glycerin, or kind of what would be a?
Yeah, a really good substitute is this water.
Really?
Or I think I have it in my notes, but
Okay.
there is a resource called the soap calculator, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
And you can enter in whatever ingredients you want to figure out what your quantity should be and how much lye you should put in.
Perfect.
So a lot of this water is really common. Milk's kind of fancy. You could use coconut milk. You can use, people have used like pumpkin puree as that liquid. There's like this, it's almost like use your imagination in a way, like what can you add to it?
Do some experimenting.
What's that?
Do some experimenting.
Oh, totally. And that self calculator will help you out, so you can experiment, but with some with knowing that you're not gonna like screw up a batch as well, because that's the biggest bummer, is like oils are expensive.
Sure.
And so you don't want to screw up a lot of soap. And you can at least have that soap calculator to help you out, and make sure you have the right quantities of things. There's even, I'm on some soap forums, And there has been a lot of interesting talk on using breast milk as well for people's babies. And that's supposed to be a thing which is interesting. There's people that use donkey milk. That was something else. And camel milk.
Sure.
Which is even harder to get a hold of.
No, my neighbors actually have camels, so it's random.
You need to get some camel milk soap. That's awesome.
Go ask them.
That's really cool.
They have zebras too. They're very interesting.
Camels are interesting.
Yeah.
I would say almost bizarre, but yeah.
Erin, if you use water, does the soap end up just being a little less smooth or soft than it does if you use milk? Creamy or?
Not necessarily. I think you can compensate for that depending on what kind of oil combinations you use. So like I'm just using olive oil, coconut oil, and shea butter. There's people that like have 5 different oils or more in their soaps. And that's something like avocado oil or almond oil or almond kernel oil, I think it is. There's like hundreds of oils. So you could compensate for that by adding certain oils in. And I think like the goat milk soap, you know, there's some sources that say that the pH in the milk that's in the soap is close to our own skin pH balance. I worked at a co-op for many years, so I don't make claims on anything. And so I don't know, like I think goat milk soap has its really good qualities, but I think you can equally make a vegan version of this soap easily too. I think goat milk soap is just like an extra added fun thing. Putting milk in a soap is pretty cool. So.
And Erin, when you were scooping out the coconut oil, I believe it was, Zoe asks, you know, how much was that? It doesn't look like you're measuring really precisely, but are you?
Yes, I have a scale right under here. That's a little bit hard to see because the the bucket or my kettle is taking up a lot of the space, but the scale right here is telling me exactly how much weight is being put in. So I am pretty precise in how much I put in. I think that's another thing that you want to be very careful with when making soap is being precise with your quantities. Otherwise, it's just not going to turn out. Like I've accidentally made soap where I put too much, like I made a double batch, but I didn't put the right amount of lye in with it. And so it was really soft and I kind of ruined the batch. But yeah, I have a scale right underneath this kettle. And so this is my oils that are in here right now. My coconut, shea, and olive oil. And this oil, as well as the lye and the milk, will make a 5-pound batch of soap, which fills up that loaf. And I need to know, another part too is it's important to know how many pounds of soap you're making so you can figure out how much either essential oil or fragrance oil you need to put in them with the batch. And it can be tricky sometimes too, and this is where that soap calculator comes in handy. Some essential oils and fragrance oils you might need more of per batch, or some you don't need so much of. I usually use an ounce of essential oil per 5-pound batch, but there's some that I need to put more in because the scent will fade, specifically citrus. The orange fades pretty quickly. So yeah, being precise or fairly precise is important. I was talking about how I'm kind of sloppy, but that is something like, you know, 2.2 pounds of olive oil in here. So that actually, I don't know if I have that recipe in here, but I have a recipe I still use because I can't remember this stuff off the top of my head. But for this batch, I have 2.2 pounds and 2 ounces of olive oil, 1 pound, 4 ounces of coconut, and then 5 ounces of shea butter. And then for my milk, I'm going to be having 1 pound, 2 ounces of milk, and then the 9 ounces of the lye. And that bentonite clay is going to be a 1/4 cup of bentonite clay. That's just something you don't really need to weigh out. and that 1 ounce of lavender essential oil in there too. Knowing these weights is this helpful for me too, because I freeze all of my goat milk that I use for soap making. Using frozen goat milk when you're putting lye into it is crucial. Don't put fresh milk in and then put lye in. You're gonna burn your milk, and it's gonna turn bright orange and it's gonna get stinky. You could probably still use it for your soap, but it might be really off color. Using that frozen goat milk will help absorb that heat that's created by adding lye to it. And you guys get to see me deal with how I deal with bags of frozen milk. I actually take a rolling pin and I will bash my bag of frozen milk and kind of crumble the milk in the bag and then dump it into my bowl and weigh it out in there. So it's kind of like my partner sees me bashing frozen bags of goat milk and he's like, oh, I want a turn. That looks like it's good stress relief. So that's pretty funny.
Erin, a couple questions about, does the handout have a recipe on it, or these, ratios, or, that recipe you have there, could they get that?
I don't have my recipe on there. I'm looking at it right now again, but I believe these links, which
Okay.
was it? Yeah, these links will take you to different recipes that you can use. Like I like spent some time and I did my own calculations and I like really simplified my recipe down. But most of these links on there will take you to different recipes where you can like figure out your own, or this like use whatever is already given to you in the recipes online. So they are there. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do really quick is fill up this sink with cool water. I will bash my goat milk soap right over there. You can see me. I won't be close to the computer because I'm sure it'll be loud. And I will show you how I mix that lye in with my goat milk. So this is actually how I deal with goat milk, is that I freeze it in quart bags like this, and they get a little bit funny looking. I like to try and have them sitting like straight and nice, but they don't always turn out like this. And I'll usually, label them with a date, so I kind of, use the old ones first. I think if you're doing smaller batches and freezing milk, you can use ice cube trays, and you can freeze the milk into little cubes and then put the cubes into a bag. And that way you don't have to smash a bag and be obnoxious about it. But I make so much, like I can't fill up ice cube trays and just make little cubes all the time. So I'm gonna smash some of this. I'm gonna mute this because it gets loud. I'll be right back. In the past, especially when I first started making goat milk soap, I started making it in the winter, and I would sit outside next to an outlet and make my soap in snowbanks because that was easy and it was kind of fun to sit outside. It would be like a nice sunny day out, and I would sit in a snowbank and make my soap, and it worked just great. And it was just kind of fun to get outside and do that. Okay. So I'm gonna weigh out my soap, or not my soap, my milk, and that is 1 pound, 2 ounces. And so for the most part, if you hit these bags just right, they're not gonna break open. And you can kind of see, I'll measure this out and you can see what it turns into. So So it turns into kind of a slushy snow-like substance, and this is great. Makes this like breaking that lye will break it down quickly, but it's still really cold. I'm just gonna get my lye essential oil and get that all lined up, and I'm gonna get my lye as well. So I order lye and bigger, you know, I get like about 12 of these at a time. And this is from the lye guy. They come in these little containers. I used to buy like a big, like that coconut oil, like a big 5-gallon pail of lye at a time. I have found that moisture will get into these bigger buckets and that moisture will ruin your lye. So I found that getting a bunch of these smaller containers helps keep that lye nice. When you see that lye has gotten moisture in it, it'll clump up. And I've made soap where the lye went bad and it failed being soap. This was a weird gelatinous goo I had to throw out. So keeping your lye tightly sealed is important. I feel kind of like a weirdo getting so much lye delivered to me. The delivery guys make fun of me. They're asking me if I'm burying bodies, and I say no. And I have one specific container that I use for lye. This is only for lye. I wash it, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. If I wanted to eat food out of it, I could, but I won't. And this is some of the essential oil that I get. I usually get like 8 to 16 ounces at a time. It's that thing of like buying bulk, you end up saving more money. And I go through this pretty quickly. My little glass containers just for the oils. Tear that out. And I'll pour out 1 ounce. So before I pour the lye, I'm gonna mask up. Is there any questions before I start this whole process?
I don't see any. Feel free to type it in or ask. And can you review again, like what you're gonna do now? So we kind of, I could use a review.
Yeah, absolutely. So on my left here, that's this off camera and my stove are all my oils that I have weighed out and that I will put on the stove and melt down. And during that, the oil's melting down, I have my milk here, and I'll kind of I will move the computer over so you can see this more. And I'll be adding my lye to that frozen goat milk and stirring that. And during that process of that milk and lye melting down, these oils will be melting down as well. And they'll basically come to the same point of that 86 degrees of heat. I'll take this off the stove, the oils. I'll bring it over here and I'll make sure that everybody can see this, but I'll be dumping that lye and goat milk mix into my melted oils. I'll take this whisk and give it a quick whisk, put it into the sink, and use this to keep on mixing the oils and the lye and the goat milk together. And I will periodically, you know, it'll be loud a little bit, but I'll keep bringing that mix over in front of the camera so you guys can see that progression of lye and oils to that batter and trace mix of the soap. And then, you know, I'll add my bentonite clay and my essential oil and my dried lavender. And I'll show you guys as I pour that batter, that soap batter into this mold. So that during this whole process, I probably won't be talking a whole lot just because there's going to be stuff going around and I just want to pay attention to live shenanigans and just keep focus on the stuff that I'm doing. So yeah, if there are any questions or if I can refresh something, let me know before I jump into that.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
For beginners, would you actually have a thermometer and, okay, it's at 86 in both, and you don't need to do that anymore, but would we?
Yes, you should. Thank you for pointing that out. I can't find my thermometer right now. I still do pop it out every once in a while to check myself, but absolutely put a thermometer in there, because that's just something you want to be precise about, and make sure your oils are at 86 and you're about, that can be a little bit, it doesn't have to be precisely 86, but it can't be 100 degrees and it can't be 70 degrees. It has to be in that realm. And the same with this mix over here. It should be in that temperature range. Yeah. And one more little thing with the oils heating up, I'll just kind of boop over really quick. They're on my stove, they're heating up. To help break these bigger chunks down of the coconut oil and the shea butter, I'll sometimes use a potato masher and I'll mash it in here to help this kind of break up the oils a little more quickly that aren't melting. So that's just a little fun thing. Or before you put your harder oils in there, you can break it up, on a chopping board or something like that, so they melt more quickly and evenly. Yay, mad scientist time. Okay. Just gonna bop this over a little bit. All right, I'm gonna be mixing that lye in with here then. When you're mixing again, since this lye can be really volatile, be really gentle with how you whisk this in. And I'll just dump a little bit of lye in at a time and just slowly mix it. You can kind of see that it's just like turning into liquid already. My goggles are fogging up. I feel like you guys can see this better. So that's just kind of that process. It'll turn a little bit yellow in there. That's fine. It might get darker than that, and that's fine. You just don't want it to turn a really icky brown color. over so you guys can see that it has turned a little bit of an orangey color, and that's fine. I don't know if it shows up well in there. I'm gonna get these piles and see how that.
Erin, we couldn't quite hear those last things you said.
Oh, sure. Oh. Just pop over. So when I don't know how well that shows up on there, but so you can see my lye and goat milk mixture is a little bit of an orangey color, and that's fine. I would just be concerned if it turned like a really burnt sienna kind of color. That's just the milk burning a little bit when you add the lye to it. It's not the end of the world, and your soap will be just fine. It might be this if ever since I'm not putting a coloring agent into the lavender, it might be this a little bit of a not pure white color, this a little bit of a beige color, and that's fine. It's not detrimental or anything like that. I probably don't have to wear this anymore. I'm just going to scoot this over here, and you can see that the oils are pretty much melted down. There's just a couple little tiny chunks of probably the coconut oil that just need to be melted. And I will be pulling this pot over to this counter again, and we'll be mixing that lye and goat milk together with the oils.
Remember your goggles, please, Erin.
I will. And this is, so before, like, if you were doing this for the first time or maybe the 10th time, this is where you would be taking your thermometers and checking that oil and that lye to make sure the temperatures meet up with each other. So that's where you want to check the temps before you mix them together. I got my goggles. So I'll just be blocking the camera for this a second, but I'll show you what it looks like after I put this lye and goat milk into the oil. You can see that it's kind of this weird brown mix, and it's hard to see, but there's a layer of oil on the top and that lye and goat milk mix is on the bottom. So this is how it will look when it first starts off. So I'm going to move it to the sink and start mixing it with that hand mixer, but I'll also be cleaning out that bowl that I had the lye and goat milk in, just to get that out of the way. And you can just take water and rinse that off and it goes down the drain, helps clean out your pipes kind of thing. So. And this is why I like making soap in the sink, is that you have drains and it's easy to wash stuff up in. So I'll be using this puppy, so it'll be noisy for a second. I'm gonna show this. It's hard to see, it's still kind of that orangey brown color. Boop. it's starting getting like this weird, not quite goopy, it's still a little bit oily mix. Sometimes it's a little bit longer, and it should be ready pretty quick.
We couldn't quite hear those last few words either, Erin.
Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna mix this a little bit longer, and it should be ready pretty quick. There we go. Better hand. See how it's just like falling. Whoops. Haha. Hi. It's just a little bit for it, like slimy yet. It hasn't quite gotten that batter consistency. So this is what your oil and flies will look like in this batter consistency when it's ready to be poured into your mold. I'm actually going to scoot off my goggles here. Very cake batter like. It's a little, it's not separating. And this is when you should add the bentonite clay and your oil or your essential or fragrance oil into this mix. It's such a weird shadow. I'm really sorry about And then lastly, it's my dried lavender that I'll pop in here. Other dried flowers or dried items work really well in soaps that can add like scrubbing power. I'll add ground coffee in. You want to just kind of do some research before you add these things in to make sure they're not too abrasive for people. So I found that half a cup of lavender goes well into my 5-pound batch of soap. I'm just getting the excess soap batter off from this mixer, and I'll just dump it in the sink, and I'll show you guys what this batter looks like. So there is the soap batter. And this is the consistency that it should have. It's almost keeping shape while it plops. It looks really good. Pretty happy with it. And I will set this up so you can see me pouring it into the mold. And this is something, again, you want to work pretty quickly with. If I left this soap sit in the kettle for 5 minutes, it'll start doing its like seizing process, and it'll get hard in your kettle. So you want to pour it into a mold within a couple minutes. Otherwise, this kettle will be your soap mold, and it'll, you'll have to chip it out later on. So this is the soap in the mold. I'll kind of jiggle it around a little bit. And that's it. Like it's pretty, I don't want to say that it was easy, because I definitely struggled when I first started making soap. But that's the gist of it. You get a recipe down, and you can make 5 pounds of soap for business or for holiday gifts. Let me actually grab another mold that I use. Actually, no, I have it right here. These are the silicone molds that I use as well. And I would actually have poured that batter in through this funnel on top. And this is where I make the round, smaller soaps. And I have this big soap cutter that I use. It's like a cheese cutter with many cutters on it. And so I can cut about 12 bars at a time. So these silicone molds are really cute, make nice little round ones. Yeah, so you just let this loaf set, wait 24 hours. You can then pull it out of its mold, whatever you're using for a mold, and cut it up and let it cure for like about 4 weeks usually is the average cure time. And that process, this helps harden the bar up a little bit more, and it makes the bar more usable. It suds up. It has more of a suds to it after it cures for that 3 to 4 to 6 weeks sometimes. What is it? Castile soap. That's 100% pure olive oil. Takes about a year to cure before you can use it. And that's in bar form. I'm not sure about the liquid Dr. Bronner's. I don't know how that's made. But yeah, and if you do other processes of the soap, some things like you can buy, it's called like a melt and pour kit, where all of this is basically made for you. You just need to heat it up, add your essential oils or items to it, and pour it into a mold. That could be a really fun way for people to start out if you don't want to tackle like that lye aspect of making soap. You can get a melt and pour and kind of get that feel for making soap in a more at an easier level, and one that you don't have to be concerned about making mistakes with. So are there any questions right off the bat, I guess? Or yeah, this is it. It's kind of it goes fast.
Yeah,
Make
Erin,
a lot
there
of stuff.
a couple questions. Like, why again do you add that clay?
this bentonite clay is really powdery. You don't have to have it in your soap. When I was researching my recipes or on different recipes to make soap, I was trying to find out what would help specifically those citrus fragrant or essential oils stick into a bar of soap longer. And that's where I came across bentonite clay, was to help keep the scents in the soap a little bit longer. There's also other things. I'm trying to remember what some of the other things I found on the side. I think it might help with like creating a lather in soap as well. But I liked how my soap felt. But that was supposed to be another added possibility, is having a better lather with your soap. And that's something I found, like when I make shaving soap, I have the same recipe basically, but I use castor oil in with the mixes, and that's supposed to help produce more of a lather that you would use for shaving, versus a bar soap that's really sudsy and bubbly. So yeah.
Cool. And what about a couple of questions about lye? Does the lye ruin or discolor a porcelain kitchen sink potentially?
Ooh, huh. Let me think. I think that's something that you should research before you do it. I don't see why it would, but I would do researching because you don't want to ruin something. What I have done in the past as well is that like my grandma grew up in the Depression area, so she taught me all of these little shortcuts and like ways to save water and money and stuff like that. And one of her things she taught me was this, like using those they're dishwashing tubs that are this plastic that you fit into your sink. And if you feel concerned about, what lye or other things would do to your sink, I would try out getting like a tub that you would put your water into and wash your soap stuff into, and dump it out into your composter outside or something like that to get rid of like that soap stuff if you're concerned about discoloration, especially with lye. Of course, be careful. I mean, it's a lot of research you should do, but like be careful with throwing lye water into your tub, like if you do use that method, because you have lye water in a tub now and it's not going down your drain. So think of a way you would properly dispose of that lye water. Yeah.
And is the lye actually corrosive to the pipes when you pour it down in your sink?
Not that I'm aware of. Actually, hey Bob, can you turn that light back on again, please? Our neighbor is actually a plumbing and water guy, and I was talking to him about this because we were having clogged drains, and I think this house has always had clogged drain issues. And so I talked to him specifically about that, like, is it okay that I'm dumping lye water down here? And he's like, yeah, that would help you clear up your drains even more. So that was his 2 cents, and he's been doing this business for 40 years. So I will listen to him. I did do a little researching with that as well, and that seemed to be the common thought process, was that it would actually help you clear out your drains. This is in Wisconsin as well. I found something out a couple years ago with soap, and that was, I want to say it was in California, where they had I think it's like gray water issues. Like they prefer that you don't use bar soaps and that you use detergents for washing yourself, because it would do something to the drains. That was just a weird side note that I found. Like I had people ordering soap from me that were in California, and they brought that issue up to me, and that was something I've never heard of before. And I don't even know if I'm describing it right, but it was this something interesting. This is something, there's a lot of fun potential with this. This could be like making soap together as a family. Like, this is a cool thing to make for people for gifts. I mean, not just for the winter holidays, like year round. If there's like a baby shower happening and you want a bunch of soap to give away, this would be a really great thing. And I'm really happy to share with people like how simple and easy it is. You just have to be careful. You have to be this, like, measure your things out well. You're probably gonna make mistakes, and it's okay. Like, don't be discouraged. Just be careful. But I've had plenty of mistakes and weird, gross things happening with my soap. It is a bummer that I have money invested in that oil and I can't use it. but don't be discouraged if you make mistakes. I would say keep at it. I'm really happy to like give pointers. There's a lot of really good online soap making forums as well that can help you. I've seen people post pictures of their horrendous mistakes and try and like get people to help um, figure out what happened and how they can fix it for next time. I feel like the soap making community is really supportive. So feel free, if you're on Facebook, to join some groups. If not, definitely go online and ask questions at any of these websites, or give me an email. So yeah, I seriously, if you guys have any questions, if I can clarify anything, I'm really, really happy to.
Great. Well, thank you.
But who's gonna make soap now?
Oh, can a person order milk from you?
I can't sell milk. I'm not a dairy. You could. I'm trying to think of some goat dairies around, not too far from where I live, that I think you can order goat milk from. And I'm actually like this living off from all of my frozen milk. I don't have any goats that I'm milking right now either. That'll happen this spring, where I'll be milking. But I mean, feel free to like send me an email, and I might just give some to you, next or late spring next year. And I'll probably, I mean, I have 13 does that are going to be kittens, so be up to my eyeballs in milk.
What about commercial canned powdered milk? Can you use that?
Yes, absolutely. This follow the instructions on reconstituting it. I actually think that's what a majority of soap makers use when they're making goat milk soap, is canned or powdered goat milk. I see a lot of that on forums. Not every, I mean, I think having goats is this like having milk as a side product. It's not necessarily you're going to get goat cysts to make soap with, but a lot of people get the powdered stuff and they use that just easy peasy. So, and again, like maybe run it through that soap calculator and make sure, but it should be fine. No problems.
And the goat milk that you can buy to drink at Whole Foods or something, you could use that for your soap as well.
Absolutely. And just remember, like even with that powdered goat milk or the milk that you buy from the store, is to freeze it beforehand. Don't use it fresh because it'll burn when you add the lye to it. So yeah, reconstitute it and freeze it, and then make your goat milk soap with it. Yeah, make it with all sorts of fun milk.
And just a question about, you had cool water in your sink, Erin. Is that just to keep that from getting too hot, the lye and milk?
And it's something that this helps cool it back down to that roughly 86 degree temperature. And it does help keep the milk or whatever else you have in there from burning. And what I do, like that's fresh cold water. If I'm making multiple batches, I'll end up adding either ice cubes or this like ice packs that we all kind of have floating around in our freezers, and I'll put ice packs into my water to keep it cold. You don't want it too cold. It's that thing of this, like, you don't want to like flash freeze it or something like that, or make it, not that you can do that, but you don't want it to get it too cold where it's no longer the same temp as your oils that you're cooking up. You want to, that's where I found this, having cool water keeps that lye, it cools it down, but not down past 80 or cooler than 86 degrees. So, and I think maybe that's why when I first started making soap, I was telling you I was sitting out in the snow doing it. I might have been kind of shooting myself in the foot and making the process harder or weirder for myself. And I think that's where I messed up some of my first soaps that I made, is I was making it too cold at first. So.
All right. I don't see any other questions coming in. But yeah, thank you, Erin, for offering, folks, you should have her contact information on the handout that was sent out. So it sounds like Erin's open to hearing from you if you have questions, or you can always get in touch with her through me. But Erin, thanks a lot for your time tonight and sharing your expertise with us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I wish you, wish you having a good holiday season and take good care, a safe holiday as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.